whatever you're doing, wherever it is, where you are, whatever time it is. And I'm going to go on about some things here to do in the Middle East where I am. At the moment I'm in Israel, and not very far from where I am, obviously, relative to the Middle East. Basically, right here, uh, right next door, if you will, in Gaza. We have in the Israeli controlled part, or the IDF controlled part of Gaza, a situation that's been going on now for some days, which has seen Hamas terrorists stuck in a tunnel east of the yellow line. So they're inside an area of Gaza that is technically still under the control of the IDF. And according to the ceasefire agreement, which was signed more than 3 weeks ago now already, um, we have Hamas terrorists stuck in a tunnel, right, inside of an IDF controlled area. And it's a terror tunnel. IDF discovered a terror tunnel there in that part of Gaza when they were clearing out things. And lo and behold, in that tunnel, there's a bunch of Hamas guys. And they're now stuck in that tunnel. They can't get out. They do have weapons, so they are armed and dangerous. And the IDF has told them to surrender their weapons or be possibly eliminated, since they are combatants in a field of combat. The terrorists refuse to surrender their weapons. Their leaders have told them, basically, that they refuse to let them surrender. There has been pressure put to the international community to allow 200 Hamas terrorists who are in clear violation of the agreement to walk free. Like, no repercussions, no price, no nothing, just walk free. Israel has said that they would actually be willing to let them walk free if it would mean getting back the body of Hadar Golden, an Israeli soldier who was kidnapped and murdered and then kidnapped in 2014. Body was brought back to Gaza and has been held there ever since. The thing is, Israel is supposed to get back his body without anything to do with these people. So that is really not a particularly useful offering. All that was really saying is, hey, look, this is your easy out. You just do the thing you already agreed to do, and we'll let you get out. I mean, basically, Israel gave them a free pass on that, and they still said no. Right? They're supposed to return the body of Hadar Golden, according to this agreement. They're supposed to return the bodies of every living hostage and every dead hostage that they have in Gaza. So that includes Hadar Golden. So there was no reason for Israel to even make that offer, except to give the Hamas an opportunity to get out of jail free, so to speak. But they refused it. Now just think to yourself, if they refuse to allow 200 Hamas terrorists who are armed and could try to fight their way out, even though they would obviously all be slaughtered if they had tried to do that, because Israel, if they saw the aggressive action, would just start, shooting missiles into wherever those idiots are trapped in their tunnel, and it'll be over. But these idiots with their guns and their leaders have refused to just say, sure, we'll give you back the thing we already said we'd give you back, and you just let these 200 guys go free. We'll give you back the body of the person we already said, and we already signed that we would give you back. But they refused that too. So now, knowing that, why would anybody believe anything they have to say ever? Right? You know that if Israel captures these people, they will not be released if, God forbid, there's a future kidnapping by the Hamas, if some other Israeli or person in Israel or people in Israel, you know they're not going to say, sure, 1 for 200. No, they're going to go back up to those 1 for 1,000 numbers, like they did with Gilad Shalit. In his case, it was 1 for 1,027, to be specific. So, should Israel capture these people, knowing that they would very likely serve time at the cost of Israel's expense, only to be released in the future as a prisoner exchange for some hostage or hostages? Here's the thing. The longer these people are languishing in their little tunnel, getting hungrier and rowdier, the longer it actually puts pressure on Israel to let them out. Now it's Shabbat, and I want nothing more than a peaceful Shabbat. But let's be honest here. It's not setting up to be a very peaceful Shabbat or new week in this situation. It's likely to cause some kind of issues for sure. Because if Israel eliminates these people, it's going to cause issues only because Israel has waited so long. If Israel had wiped them out the moment they were discovered in this tunnel, there'd be no question, there'd be no issues about it. 200 terrorists killed in a tunnel. End of story. Right? But now they've been in negotiations for days and days. So now they've humanized these terrorists? Well, they are humans, but that doesn't mean you have to show them any mercy in this situation. Now you could. So I personally believe Israel is going to do that. I don't think strategically in the long term that's necessarily to Israel's benefit. What, so we can have more chips to bargain away the next time we have to do a hostage deal? We got plenty of terrorists in prison already. We don't have to worry about that. We don't need to slop another 200 people in there. Well, we can, but we don't need to. We can just as easily get rid of these people who are doing disgusting things, looking to break their own agreement. So, from my point of view, yeah, no, Israel should not be doing what it does at the moment, looking to give a way out to these Hamas terrorists. Just get rid of the problem. Said hi. Hi from New Zealand. Well, hello, New Zealand. Hello, Turkey. Hello, everybody. Yeah. Here in sunny old Israel, where the weather is balmy. No pun intended. Or maybe just a little pun intended. So what is happening with the situation with the negotiations? Well, the Israeli team has negotiated directly with the Hamas team. Like Israel has negotiated directly with Hamas, not through a mediator, directly. Meaning Israel has the phone numbers of the people in Hamas and is able to reach out and touch someone, so to speak. Which of course we know that because Israel calls them frequently to tell them about things. Like, we are going to bomb you in this building at this time. Right? They call civilians, they call people in Hamas even to tell them. By the way, if you're wondering, why do they call civilians surrounding Hamas, and even sometimes Hamas people themselves, to tell them? Don't the people in Hamas just run away? Of course, most of the time they do. Some of the time, they don't. Because stupid reasons, but also because sometimes the Hamas thinks that they can survive a bombing, which is insane, but they think that. Other times they want to demonstrate that they are fighting against Israel, etc. So if they die shaheeds, glory and all this stuff they get in the afterlife, which is crazy. But then sometimes, even if they run away or not, the reason Israel is calling these people to begin with is not just to get the people out of the way, because that is a main principal reason. But it's because the people aren't even the issue. Even the terrorists themselves aren't necessarily the issue. What makes those terrorists dangerous? Sure, anyone can kill anyone with even their fingers. No problem. I understand that. But what makes it actually much easier to kill people is weapons. And one of the things that the terrorists love to do in those tunnels and in those buildings is store weapons. A lot of them. So when Israel calls and says, yeah, we're bombing this place, it's usually because they're about to bomb a place that has a lot of arsenal or high value targets or both. And so they're going to, destroy a building that's booby trapped like hell, or that has, weapons in it, weapons caches, etc. But there are a number of legally justified that the IDF uses to blow up specific targets. Do they blow up every building? No, they don't blow up every building. They blow up the ones that they think need to be destroyed. Do they blow up more than is absolutely necessary? Maybe, probably. It's called being safe and also being efficient or effective. Right? You don't want to waste your time and your resources sending in soldiers and putting their lives at risk to inspect every single little nook and cranny of every little building when at least half the buildings on the block that you've inspected are booby trapped. So if you checked out 4 buildings and 2 of them are booby trapped, and you check out another 4 and another 2 are booby trapped, yeah, half the buildings are booby trapped. Whack them all. Because you're not necessarily 100% sure that the ones you didn't find booby traps in are not necessarily booby trapped in some way you just didn't see. And since half the buildings are, well, get rid of them all. Easier way to do it. If you're anyway going to blow up half the buildings, it's going to probably damage the other half, so clear the street. And it's not a perfect way to do it. That's why we always say war sucks and you shouldn't engage in it, right? You shouldn't participate in it. Certainly, as an aggressor, as a belligerent, beginning a war, that is a very stupid idea, right? If you begin a war, you're very likely to get hurt. That's just a fact. And if you begin a war against an enemy that has more than enough resources to literally eliminate you off the face of the earth in less than an afternoon if it wanted to, well, that is very, very stupid behavior. And it's behavior you really should avoid doing. So, that's why I once again remind you of the utter stupidity of the Hamas leadership, right? They knew going into October 7th, for example, they knew what the consequence would be. And yet they did it anyway, right? They knew absolutely that Israel would not just take them to task over this little fight, over this massive invasion of the terrorists into Israel. And I say massive because, yes, in relative terms, you could say, well, it was smaller than other invasions. Okay, in Israel's history, it was massive to have that many terrorists invade from one place and kill and torture and maim and rape and beat and harm and kidnap as many people as they did in that day. That's something that never happened before since Israel was recreated in 1948. And you'll hear often people say since the Holocaust, right? Yes, the biggest murder of Jews in one day since the Holocaust. That's true. But it was a miscalculation by Hamas. Right? Let's be clear about that. It's not just the size and scale of the attack itself, which was large for Hamas's ability. Right? They punched up, if you will. They didn't really punch up in terms of their targeting because they targeted civilians, but they punched up in terms of their weight, their body, their class, in terms of the amount of damage that they did. They outperformed what a lot of analysts in the military and top officers in the military thought they might do. Right? Their potential was ignored by the people who should not have ignored it. It wasn't ignored by people like me and many others who said they are really dangerous. You have to more than keep an eye on them, you have to destroy them. No, but they were ignored by the top analysts that actually make the decisions, the people actually playing the game at that level. Right? Those of us doing other things, well, we didn't have a particular say on what was going to happen on that day, right? As useful as it might have been if we did, as helpful and as protective as it might have been had our warnings been heeded, like years in the past already, going back many years, you got to get rid of these people, not just pretend to be tough with them. You need to actually get rid of them, right? The management of this issue did not take to heart the words of the specialists and did not take to heart the words of other managers and other departments who know full well the danger and the risk inherent in allowing such a group to continue to exist and do what they were doing until that day. And nevertheless, that group, Hamas, and their own management made a gross miscalculation, which is why Israel was sure to win this war kinetically. Not only does Israel have the kinetic ability to just decimate that organization, like I said, in an afternoon if it wanted to, but the Hamas knew it. And they knew that the only way that they could hope to get any PR points was to prolong the conflict and cause as much damage as possible among their own people and see their own areas get completely destroyed by Israel. So anyone who had been promised, oh, you'll get an apartment if you bring back a hostage to Gaza, you'll get, an apartment plus money if the hostage is alive, you get all kinds of wonderful things, like material benefits in the current world. But they knew that Israel was going to bomb the crap out of the strip. They knew full well that Israel would take severe measures against them, not a little bit here and there, right? The thing is, Hamas did better, quote unquote, than they thought they would. What's it say? Jesus, okay, sure, Jesus, man. Jesus loves you, yeah, brother. Why not? I'm Jewish, but thanks anyway. Appreciate it, and God loves you too. Hamas knew that they would get obliterated materially. They knew that they would lose a lot of people. They knew that a lot of regular people would get decimated. Yet they kept doing it anyway because they did not care, right? They were not interested. Hey, doggy. They were not interested in the fact that Israel was going to hit them back a little bit. No, they knew that the hit would be extremely strong and that they were counting on that to get sympathy. Because the harder Israel hits back, the more sympathy they get from the useful idiots who know nothing, or the people who know something but have been brainwashed. So what they know is toxic nonsense, right? That's the miscalculation they made at the management level that did not help their side at all. Because they knew they were going to get eliminated, but they did it anyway. Well, alaikum salam to you, Rory, in Tunisia. Shalom from Israel, brother. And I don't know what Berchata is, but hello, Berchata. Hello, doggy. How you doing, buddy? Hello. 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 What a cute dog. كلب خمود. איך קוראים לו? דייסון? איזה חמוד. שואב אבק, כמובן. מצחיק. Dog named Dyson. Like the vacuum cleaner brand. Fun trivia question. Do you know what Dyson what the name Dyson means in the world of technology before the famous vacuum cleaners of that name? Do you know? Name me a person, organization, or something related to the word Dyson that has to do with, I'll give you a hint, technology. What does that have to do with technology before the vacuum cleaner brand existed? If you can name it, well, then you win a point. And they might send you a prize. Who knows? Maybe not. But we'll see at the end of the stream. I don't see any comments popping, so guess you're not interested. Anyway, so we knew for a fact that Hamas miscalculated the actions of their own people and the people that were allowed to go into Israel from Gaza, right? Which most of them were not even in Hamas or other terrorist organizations. They were just regular civilians. So they miscalculated their actions. They miscalculated the results of those actions. And then they miscalculated by like 100 times Israel's reaction to it. So if anyone is surprised, yeah, that Israel hit back for more than 700 days, I don't know what to tell you. You don't know how to read information. You're talking about a country that has been at war since its inception by enemies who have been attacking it from all sides since its secession. Now, yes, we have in Israel, thank God, we have achieved peace with the two countries that have the biggest borders with Israel. So that is wonderful. Egypt and Syria, who have the largest, the majority of the border with Israel, are at peace with Israel, at least at a government level, which means that we are able to, have more secure borders, etc. Because whether the people of those countries like Israel or not is moot. The fact is, those countries do have a technical peace with Israel, right? But in the case of Gaza, obviously, we don't have peace with the people in Gaza. We have a terrorist organization running Gaza, which that in and of itself should be enough of a showstopper that there is no question about what has to be done. Right? If you have an organization that is actually a proscribed terrorist organization internationally, but even by the EU, for God's sake, that organization should be ended. Okay? With as much power as possible, as quickly as possible. It should be removed from history. It should be ascribed to the dustbin of history, so to speak. It should simply not exist. And the fact that it does says a lot about the very system of diplomacy and politics that allows for these kind of rat bastards to continue existing when they should just clearly be eliminated. Right? Let's just be clear about that. There isn't a situation in which allowing these people to survive is a very good thing, right? It's just not a thing, right? These rat bastards that have done everything they can to dehumanize people and do violence and do unspeakable acts as their intentional strategy, they don't, there's no place here for them, right? They need to go to Gehenna, hell, right? It's my opinion. Take it or leave it. What they've done is certainly deserving of that more than of going to heaven, What they've done is, by every stretch of the imagination and by every possible explanation, perceived as or perceivable as immoral, criminal, dangerous, and violent, and they deserve what's coming to them in the afterlife, which is certainly not going to be a good one if what comes to them is related to their faith or another. So, but yeah, again, speaking on a purely logistical level, they miscalculated grossly. They made a very, very big mistake in doing their numbers. Had they not sucked at math, they might have found a better way forward. But we're talking about people who aren't exactly the most capable when it comes to making good calculations, strategic or tactical or otherwise. What they are capable of at their highest level on their political wing is they know how to beg and plead and get money from wealthy donors who side with them ideologically, like Qatar and Iran. They have wealthy donors among them. Their nations might have some issues, but Qatar's nations are certainly is very wealthy, but Iran, which has a lot of wealth, manages it very poorly. Right? To be fair, so does Qatar, except that Qatar knows how to invest their money in ways that are very disruptive to the West. Right? They invest in soft jihad, right? Which is in many ways more dangerous than violent jihad because they basically can conduct it in public and nobody stops them. What's more dangerous than that? I don't really know. They're clearly a danger to society. They're clearly a danger to the West. Nobody stops them. No government stops them. Nobody interferes. They're just allowed to keep spewing their hatred, and there's no consequence. And as a result, you have what you have. Right? You have a bunch of hate in the West against the West, paid for or created by influence through proselytization and through miseducation, through influencers who are all paid for from the education system and to religious systems to social media systems, etc., social influencers. That's all bought and paid for by places like Qatar, who have a very tiny population and a hell of a lot of money. They have literally a few 100,000 citizens, a few million expats who contribute to their economy, who don't get any social benefits or rights or anything like that from living in Qatar. They just live in Qatar, work in Qatar, make money in Qatar, and then leave Qatar. After paying taxes to Qatar, of course. So the expats contribute money to Qatar's economy, grow Qatar's economy. Qatar's revenues just keep increasing, especially because they have oil and gas, which, again, 90% of that profit from their oil and gas comes from an island they share with Iran. So, of course, they have conflicts of interest with the United States that has a huge base in Qatar. So Qatar is a huge problem. And for them to even be involved in this sort of stabilization force nonsense, frankly, is ridiculous. They are causing the destabilization. To invite them to be on the stabilization force is like inviting Syria to be president of the Human Rights Council, which it was at a time when they were butchering their own people in the hundreds of thousands of people, right? They were killing up to 500,000 people or so during that civil war they had, at the same time that they were serving on the Human Rights Council, while they were literally inhumanely butchering their own people at the hands of the Assad forces, as well as the the Hezbollah forces that operated under Assad. People like to pinkwash the fact that many other terrorist groups were also based in or operating in Syria and helping Assad to do his worst. Something I don't really whitewash because it happened a lot. Right? It's not a little thing, right? Assad used forces from far and wide to do his dirty bidding and to do his killing. And they did for a long, long time. More than a decade of killing. And that was after his father, who had done all the killing that he had done during his time leading the country. So basically speaking, right, all these different dictatorships and terrorist groups who've done their best to destabilize, they really put in their effort, to destabilize the region and specifically to destroy Israel or to attack Israel, even if they knew they couldn't actually destroy Israel, they still attacked Israel for the very purpose of distracting their own people, right? We know that's why they do it. We know that's why they do it. They distract their people and they put the blame on Israel because that's all they've got, right? They don't have a better strategy. These are people who would otherwise be, if they didn't have any weapons, they'd be throwing rocks at each other or monkey poo or whatever. I say that as a joke, but not really. Let's just say. Okay. Maybe calm down, bro. I don't know what that means. Trump isn't how, yeah. So, okay. You need that rock, Joe Rogan. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but okay. What you gonna say to Joe Rogan? Okay. Yeah, what are you gonna say to Joe Rogan? Who cares what he says? Joe Rogan is an entertainer. Do not take him seriously. If you're looking at Joe Rogan's content for news, and I know there are some people who sometimes go on there and say some things that end up becoming news. If you're looking at a social media podcaster guy who frankly admittedly doesn't have the chops to really know what he's even talking about many of the times he's speaking on a lot of different topics he talks about, right? He admits that he's just some average guy, which of course is a populist line to endear yourself to the average person to seem relevant or relatable, but it also underscores the fact that he's not an expert on these topics, and you don't need to be an expert on every topic to have an opinion, of course, but he is so blatantly wrong about many of the things he says, and his team of people, which is more than one person, his team of people do not do anything to correct him. And therein lies the problem with Joe Rogan. Right? Joe Rogan is not just by himself saying stupid things. No, if he was just by himself saying stupid things, we could all forgive that. It wouldn't make a difference. But he's not. Joe Rogan has a team of people who babysit his stupid things, and they don't fact check him. They don't correct him when he's clearly in the wrong. Right? And that's not a good thing. So that is what there is to say about that. Shouldn't look to that guy for news, if you will. He may occasionally have guests who say something that becomes news, or that becomes a meme at least. And he does frequently. But look, he has personally said a lot of stupid things and been demonstrated to be wrong. And does not take accountability in most of those cases. So do I consider that to be honorable? No, I don't. When you have that kind of reach, when you literally reach however many millions of people listen to him or watch him or both, you have a responsibility to be accurate with your information. Just like Al Jazeera is a propaganda network, right? They have a responsibility to be accurate, but they're not, and nobody takes them to task over it. But because of the way they present themselves, they use the flashy, mainstream media type graphics and all that stuff, and language to try to couch everything and justify everything, and appear as though they're moderate, but they're clearly not. Um, they have a responsibility to the truth, but they don't actually, because they're just a propaganda mouthpiece of the Qatari government. And nobody who's watching them, usually, in the large distribution of their audience, the average viewer of their content is not well informed about these topics, right? They've been brainwashed about these topics. Look at the countries where Al Jazeera is even allowed to air still. And look at the countries where, by the way, it's not. Notice there's a lot of Arab countries where there's no Al Jazeera because they've been found to be fomenting terrorism, hate, and violence, which are not okay in many of those countries. I pointed out because it's kind of important, right? It's an important observation of fact that the people who don't even allow that content in their own countries are people who are actually the very prime target audiences that Al Jazeera used to target and would love to target again, if not for the fact that those countries have blocked Al Jazeera from appearing in those countries for those very reasons. Right? It is a propaganda piece. That's all it is. It's a propaganda tool for Qatar. If you don't know that, you're kind of living in La La Land. So that's my greeting to you on this Saturday morning from Israel. It's still morning here, barely, but it is. And I sincerely hope we will see better days ahead in terms of seeing this war actually end. Because right now, this war is not ending anytime soon, unfortunately. It has been going on, and it will continue to run for the time being because there's just too much vested interest on the part of Hamas. They don't want to end it because ending it means they have to give up the one thing that they can claim as a victory for them, which is the bodies of the hostages that they've murdered and held in captivity, and control of Gaza for the past 20 years. Whatever, 18, 19 years since 2006, when they won the election, and in 2007 when they actually took power, right? So that is the one loss that they cannot accept in their heads. But in reality, they're about to find out the hard way what happens when you don't do what you're supposed to do and you're up against the guns of the IDF. So, in a baseball situation, that might say good luck to the underdog, but in this situation, not so. Good luck to Israel. And in some ways, you could even say actually Israel is the underdog in reality, because even though we are a stronger army than Hamas, we're still a tiny nation compared to all the nations surrounding us that don't like us and would wish us ill. So in that sense, I am voting for the underdog, the real David, not the fake David. The real David versus Goliath. Go Israel. And I hope the IDF will actually destroy the Hamas terrorists in the tunnels, be done with it, and move on to the next issue, which is to get the Hamas to give up their weapons and surrender power. And if they don't do that, Israel should just obliterate them, period. Good evening, Israel. Good evening, Brisbane, Australia. Nice to see you. Nice to see you there. Joe Cool. Hello. Joe Cool, good day to you, mate. And to everyone else as well. See if I might keep this going if you guys want me to, because there are actually other topics to talk about, but I think I'm going to end it here. So unless I get some comments in the chat right now telling me to keep going, I'm going to end it. Okay? Great. All right, folks. See you guys later. Have a good one. Peace. Shalom.